Welcome to the Voxgig podcast. We talk to people in the developer community about developer relations, public speaking, and community events. For more details, visit voxgig.com/podcast. All right, let's get started. Sometimes in your career as a programmer, you get to work with somebody really amazing. For me, that person is a former colleague, Matteo Collina. Matteo is the maintainer of a whole load of open source in the Node.js community. But you may know him from a particularly great project, which is Fastify, which is one of the fastest web servers written in Node.js. Matteo has just launched a startup, Platformatic. And in this podcast, we talk about his approach to developer relations, how he has used his legacy in open source to build an audience for the startup that he has just created. We talk about a key strategy for building a developer community, which is to have a really good plugin model. I know this sounds like a technical solution to a people problem, but sometimes solving people problems involves having a good technical foundation. Plugins allow you to create a community because it enables ease of contribution. We then talk about one of the trickiest things to get right when you're building developer relations, which is where to put the developer relations team. Do they report to marketing? Do they report to the CTO? Do they have their own little department? We get right into all that stuff. We also talk about a tricky little subject, which is something that I've had trouble with in the past, which is that all the other developers in your company look at everybody in the developer relations team and see them having great fun at conferences. How do you deal with the professional jealousy that causes? And finally, we conclude with a few little tips about how to survive at conferences. In particular, Matteo has this really cool technique, which he calls sailor sleeping, which if you speak at conferences, you're going to find really useful. And so, without further ado, let's get started. Matteo, it is great to have you on the Voxgig podcast. Welcome. Tell us about Platformatic, your new startup.
Hi, Richard. I am so happy to be here with you. I've been watching what you've done with Voxgig for the last few years. And look, it's kind of amazing. So I really wanted to join you, to join and share a little bit of what I'm doing. What is Platformatic? This is a good question. Okay, so I've been working as a consultant for maybe most of my career, and I am doing the jump of each consultant wants to do or dreams to do, moving from being a consultant to build a product.
Yes, I know.
Oh, you know, I know you know, and that's why it resonates, and really wanted to be here with you. So I essentially took my learnings of quite a few years of consulting work and look at what were the problems in the market and so on and so forth, and started to condensate the learnings that myself and my co-founder had, Luca Maraschi, in a new product. So I'm pretty excited because we just shipped our first open source bits. So yes. I'm very excited about this stuff. So it's a good time to talk. So what do? We help companies and we help developers really remove all the friction from backend development. Essentially, they need to develop new APIs, and if they want to integrate new components and stuff. We want them to just focus on the business logic that make their product special and not waste time in doing repetitive tasks or repetitive chores. We will go from, automating the building of CRUD-like API, create, read, update, delete style of APIs to later on, some level of platform engineering and automated deployments, and provide a complete solution that can be used to speed up the development of APIs and backend components.
So the way that you're going to approach the market is what's I think is really cool. You've put a lot of years of effort into open source. You're one of the core Node.js contributors. Fastify API server is kind of cool, very fast. So in a way, this is not advice to people listening to, here's how you can do this in 6 months because you spent 8 years investing. But I guess it shows the value of a long-term investment in open source, right?
Yeah, essentially, this is the last step of a long journey in building open source components. So back in 2016, this is a long time ago, okay? You were still with Nearform, Richard. So,
yes,
I was with Nearform, you were with Nearform.
A long time ago.
It was actually a long time ago, okay? I created Platformatic. I created Fastify. Fastify is a new Fastify is an API framework for Node.js. Now it's part of the OpenJS Foundation. Long time ago, and this is now exploded. Like it has $3 million per month, something like that. I'm very happy about.
Very nice. Yes, very nice.
It grows magnificently. This is really great, and it has a lot of different companies collaborating and maintaining it and moving it forward and pushing it up. It's phenomenal to see. We did a few releases recently, and it was like maybe 17. There were 17 collaborators to a release. Like it's incredible. Most of we had 10 were new people. Like it's mind blowing.
Have you guys set up like a proper committee to run it and all that sort of stuff?
We have a group of maintainers. Then we have essentially 3 kings of the project that can essentially make the decisions and have admin power, veto power, and everything. So it's almost a 3-headed constitutional monarchy at this point.
You're not being inspired by your Italian heritage, triumvirates and all that sort of stuff, are you?
No, we will do for people eventually. Well, it's on my to-do list to move to full technical steering committee model. It's already happening, to be honest. So it's just a matter of me writing the bylaws or copying the bylaws from Node, essentially.
You're the lawgiver. Very good. That's a very serious business. You have to create laws that sustain an open source culture.
Look, it's very weird. Okay, being part of the OpenJS Foundation helps a lot. So once you start your open source project, it becomes attracting a few collaborators and stuff. Moving it to a foundation like OpenJS is actually great, so that it helps quite a lot on those kind of things. Like there are templates for all the stuff.
Yes.
So
yeah.
You can take a template and you're good, essentially. So, and they are proven by hundreds of thousands of hundreds of open source projects already. So they work very well, or at least they work. It's very well. We're still improving on stuff, but they work.
What did you learn about you're selling to developers in your new company, and developer relations, which is kind of my new interest, is something that I'm keen to understand how people use it. But how did you experience or handle developer relations? And maybe you didn't even use that term from the open source maintainer perspective, because people get very stressed about it sometimes, and it's difficult.
Okay, it's very let's classify it a few bits. So there's Fastify, and then there is my new company, Platformatic. Those are 2 separate things. Fastify is an open source project, is part of the OpenJS Foundation. Platformatic is a company and also an open source project, but it's fully governed by the Platformatic Incorporated, our company.
Yes. Okay. So there is a
very important distinction to be done here. Yeah. So the first one is once you are doing you're setting up your project. So let's talk a little bit about what Platformatic does. Okay, Platformatic does basically it's the cherry on top of all the work that I've done in the last all open source stuff that I've done in the last few years. Essentially, as I said, we want to remove all the friction and create a more opinionated way to do things on top of the Node.js and Fastify ecosystem. So we package things up in a way and provide solutions to common tasks, to common things. We just open source our first component called Platformatic DB. It takes a SQL database and it automatically creates REST and GraphQL APIs from it, like other tools that are in the market. Unlike other tools, you can actually completely customize it and script it by using Node.js. So all of this is just based on Node.js and Fastify. Fastify is based on a phenomenal plugin architecture that was totally inspired by Seneca, your framework. So thanks.
Yeah, because and my plugin architecture is a bit rusty, so I must. Rusty as in broken.
Yeah, I know, but I would say it was actually very deeply inspired by it.
Also, I must have a look there. Maybe I can copy.
Yeah, you can actually lift. You can possibly. It's a separate module even, so you can even.
Yes, awesome. Okay.
So it's called Avio. The module is called Avio. You might even lift it off. It just does all the things that you need essentially. No. And it's basically it's all based on this plugin system. And therefore you can actually extend it, modify it, add more things, add more routes, add more resolvers, change the GraphQL schema, add all sorts of things that are missing in the system. Okay, so it has endless. It's completely pluggable. That's the gist of.
Was the existence of a plugin architecture important?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Like. Solving that problem was super important and critical for Fastify success and now for Platformatic too. Like if Platformatic will not exist if it wasn't for
the plugins are the kernel around which the community forms because people decide to write plugins.
Pretty much. So Fastify has more than 250 plugins now. And basically, by building something that is very small, smallish, okay, and making it completely pluggable, so people can actually express their creativity. While they can express their creativity, create new things with it, without increasing too much the maintenance burden on the product. Yeah. And we took these lessons in Platformatic. And we went one step further, okay, and said, well, what if those plugins could actually be, mini apps or complete systems that you could add into your in your deployments, okay, in your work. So how can we make it taking one step up and make sure that there are pre-made components that are already written by somebody else or automatically generated that you don't even have to write or maintain, which is, a line of code that I don't have to maintain is a great line of code. So,
exactly. And these are reusable, okay?
So, yeah, so the generic bits, so the way components, the way we are working with Platformatic, everything is a Fastify plugin at its core. So you could even decide, we have Platformatic DB. Platformatic DB in reality is a collection of Fastify plugins. And some of those and you can just use those plugins yourself if you want. So you could just take, I want to expose these 4 database tables as my REST and GraphQL, REST or GraphQL endpoints, do that, and then build a completely different application next to it.
Okay. Here's a challenge that I've had. I'm interested to hear how you are addressing this one. So you have a team of developers in Platformatic now helping you build the system.
Yeah, we do.
So if you've started an open source project, if you worked on open source projects that are platforms like Node.js, you learn to take a platform perspective on things. You understand that every decision means a lot, right? You have to think about backwards compatibility. I've always had a lot of challenges when I try to onboard developers to communicate the thought process platform thinking, thinking about respecting existing users, thinking about future user sensibility, because a lot of developers just want to solve the problem in front of them. Which is absolutely correct. In normally, that is, don't waste time and money, right? Solve the problem. But I've always struggled to teach platform thinking.
Okay. So I have a superpower.
Okay.
I am hiring people from the open source community.
Yes.
I am cheating badly here. So if you just hire people from the open source community, I've done a few phenomenal hires of people that were already part of the community, maintainers themselves. So, and that was phenomenal. It worked beautifully.
Okay, yeah, and then you already have people who have experienced those challenges, who've had to think about those problems.
Pretty much, yes. The other key things that I've done in starting my new team, it's again, they say do unscalable things when they start a new company, right? So what I did essentially, I opened my address book and I hired a lot of ex-colleagues.
Yeah.
And ex-colleagues are amazing. Okay, you work with them before. Somebody else poached them from you, from the company we're working. You probably know them very well. They know how they work. They know how they think, and they know you. And you already have a high bandwidth channel created, so you could literally hash things out very quickly.
Yeah. It's good to cheat. That's how you win.
Oh, big time! Like again, I am. I am literally. I've learned quite a few things on my journey in Nearform, talking about cheating, and it's one of the most important lessons is how to build a global business. Okay, and have hire people scattered across the globe. So it's
it makes you stronger, right?
It makes you significantly stronger, not just strong.
And then the other side of this, which I think helps you, is all of the work that you've done, speaking at conferences and generating content and all that sort of stuff. Are you going to continue that strategy? Is that a formal strategy?
So this is the second step. Okay. So in order to promote to developers, you need to promote it where they are, and you need to talk to them where they are. And there are essentially two kinds of developer relation strategy that a company can apply. What Platformatic is looking for is usage and feedbacks. So that's what we go to conference, event, and speaks and promote our stuff. The other one, and this is also valuable, is for hiring and talking to developers, because you need to hire them. Both of those strategies are good developer relation strategies, and that should be owned by the developer relation team in your company if you have a bigger company. Okay, not just a startup of a few people, because if you are just if your number is under 10, you know everybody is doing everything. So and you know that very well, Richard.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's I won the title of chief of boxes recently, so I was the one that needed to pack the boxes to ship it.
It's got to be done. Yeah,
it's got to be done, and it's the buck stops here. So if it's me, it's me. Like, it's not many other people. Like, there is another one person that we can talk about, but if I have the stuff to be sent in locally, that's it.
Well, I think as a leader, are you familiar with this concept of the leader as servant, right?
Yeah, that's
your job is actually to do the shitty jobs. So
pretty much. As a leader, you do the shitty jobs, more or less. So a lot of people don't get that, by the way. So it's
no, it's because you're creating, when you do that, you create intrinsic motivation in people in the company. You shouldn't have to force people to work, right?
Yeah,
you should want to, because not because they enjoy it. Work is not meant to be fun, right? Work is work, but because it's it means something.
Yeah. Well, hopefully.
Hopefully. Yeah, it's always going to be a challenge, and it changes as you go through Platformatics journey at different levels, different numbers of people. You have a lot of fun ahead of you, Matteo. A lot of fun.
Oh, I can't wait. So
now here's a question for you. Just going back to company design. Okay.
Yeah.
Developer relations. Is that done by all of the developers as part of their job? Is it done by a special team? Does it report to engineering? Does it report to marketing?
It reports to engineering. First thing, it reports to engineering. Okay. If it doesn't report to engineering, it's marketing, and it's a different thing.
Okay.
But fundamentally, if it reports to marketing, it's wrong. Now, the key challenge in a larger organization of reporting to engineering is budgets and budget allocation. Developer relations is very much a money-intensive thing, and typically engineering teams don't have that much money. So this is the challenge, and why somebody want to put them in marketing. So they are better suited in engineering than marketing, but I can see as they are their own independent thing. Because mostly it will be better from a budgeting perspective.
Okay, so it's a discussion in the developer relations community, whether it belongs in marketing or engineering, and a lot of people favor marketing because the budget is easier to access. It's much easier to convince the CMO to spend $20K sending a team to a conference than the CTO, right? In a traditional organization.
Well, so. This is the fundamental challenge, and I would say that if it's CTO don't get it, they're probably getting developer experience completely wrong.
Yeah. Well, then they're probably VP of Eng, not CTO, really.
Yeah, but still, it doesn't matter. It's it also depends. It depends on who are you, why you're doing it. Okay, if you are why you're doing developer relations. So if you're doing developer relations for talking to clients. So as I said, there are two broads. One is selling to developers, okay, promoting some tools and technologies. The other one is recruiting. Those two things can be intertwined, but typically when you set up on a goal, you do one or the other, okay? When you have a piece of content that you're producing, you're either pitching for users or for hiring. Okay, there's typically either one or the other. Now, in each cases, if you're building, if your users are developers of your product are developers, and it's essentially the CTO job to sell to them. Okay, it's not the marketing job to sell to those people; it's the CTO job. Correct. And at the same time, if you are hiring for developers, is the CTO job ultimately to hire them. So from my point of view, it's actually both of those are the CTO jobs and not the CMO, even if the CMO has more money. And the fact that, and this is fundamentally the tension of that this creates.
Yeah, it's an interesting challenge, because where does developers don't respond as well to traditional marketing in the first place. So yeah. Your organization design when you sell to developers
is different. Essentially your CTO is your CMO.
Effectively, yeah.
Effectively.
And you have to be Werner Vogel's, I think, in Amazon is kind of a good example, right? In that
Amazon does Amazon have a CMO?
I don't even know. No, I don't think so. Right, he is the CMO effectively.
Yeah, well, he is again. I think they have some companies, some larger company. The developer relations unit is essentially its own reporting line.
Now that's another structure. That's another structure which appeals to me, is that it's an entirely new part of the business.
It is, and I've seen quite a few companies having, for example, VPs of developer relations in it.
Yeah.
So let me look it up. I just don't want to misname companies, so I'm just looking up on LinkedIn. So
On that basis, I have a difficult question for you, and this is something.
Yeah, like for example, a company that does that is Netlify.
Okay.
As a VP of developer experience. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
Because it's a critical function of the company. So
it has to be. Yeah, it has to be. I have a difficult question for you, Matteo.
Yeah.
And I know we've both experienced this, which is jealousy. When you have an organization where you have line of business developers who are building the product, doing the consulting work, whatever, and then you have a separate team or unit that does developer relations. And the line of business developers look at the developers in developer relations. Those guys are going to conferences and they have fun stuff on their Twitter, and they're coming home with new T-shirts. And, T-shirts are cheap, but swag is important. And they're getting all the fame and respect. You have a difficult political situation to manage.
Don't tell me. I know that very well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you do? I never solved that problem, by the way.
I think I did after you switched to you left Nearform. Okay. I think I cracked. I solved that for Nearform.
Yeah. Talk about that. Okay.
At that time, so I think this solution. I think the solution. So there are two solutions here, two ways to solve this problem. The first one is, first of all, transparency. So show how much work there is. Like the typical working hours when you are traveling or at a conference is 16 hours a day.
Yeah, it's hard work.
So. And then that gets bad. Okay, it's most people when realize how much work there is going to conference. Oh, but that's not fun.
No, and then your family misses you, right?
And then the family start missing you big time. Okay, so this is another really much fatigue, and it's so that those are essentially the down. So show the downsides of They might project an image on social media of fun and whatever. Reality is a huge load of work.
Yeah.
Okay. Then the second thing that you can actually do is create revolving doors for people to try doing that. And then when they try and don't do a good job about it, they realize that, oh, yeah, no, this is hard. Let's leave this to people that wants to do this kind of life and job. And
you stay at the stand every day, for 10 hours at the conference, talking to random people.
Yeah, pretty much. That's typically that remove, and you don't need to do it for a lot of people, but then you just do it for 10 or 20 or a small population of the conference. Then whatever voice of, oh, you are doing, you're just having fun, it just completely disappears. Basically, you just put people on the, make people man the booth, make people talk to devs all the time, and all the things that they need to remember, all the things, the way they need to pitch things, and so on and so forth. Yeah, it doesn't go well. It's not easy.
And it involves a lot of people work as well, which is very exhausting. Very tiring.
It's super exhausting. You
remember one time we were at a conference in San Francisco, I think, and I was supposed to meet you.
Yeah.
I fell asleep.
Man, don't.
You were supposed to be going, where are you? I was like, sorry, I was asleep.
Don't worry. I am unfortunately famous between friends, tech friends, of me falling asleep. Randomly falling asleep at workshop that I'm not presenting, or meetings when traveling, and so on and so forth. Like literally,
I want to meeting. Okay.
Look, at some
point. That's the next level up, Matteo.
Look, I literally cracked. Like my brain stopped functioning, and but somebody was completely. This happened also very recently, and it was just like very often I have a technique to keep keep being awake by not being awake or something.
Okay.
So I close my eyes and I really focus on the voice of the people speaking. However, just closing off the eyes helps me essentially deeply focus only on that. So I can jump back into the discussion without, even if it's, I was essentially in a state of rest physically.
Yeah, you reduced the bandwidth. There was sensory.
Yeah, pretty much. So I reduce the bandwidth to the bare minimum, and then I can keep that going. And while having the rest, have not caring about my body or on what I'm seeing and so on, just focusing on the voice. Especially on high talk meeting, this is actually very useful.
Yeah,
it's they call it the sailor's sleep in Italy, or my family and whatever. It's something that I learned from my dad and my family. We've been sailing for all our lives. So basically, when you're on a boat, and you always want to rest, being aware of your surroundings.
Because you always need to react.
Yes, you need to be able to jump on it if something happens. So even if you're sleeping, you are not off. So you can
like a cat. You have to, like a cat. Wow.
Jump. Yeah, like a cat. Yeah, exactly.
That's an interesting skill. I suppose you have to practice it from when you were a child, maybe.
I don't. To be honest, I don't remember. But yeah. Look, it might just be something you're born with, or something that you see others do, and then you know what it is.
And you can learn. Okay. Yeah, interesting. I might try that all the same. The bandwidth reduction. That's a good idea.
It's look. It's just literally, that helps me a lot, because otherwise, when traveling, it will be impossible for getting things through. Okay.
Yeah, it is. Well, that's a really good piece of developer relations conference advice to finish on. Matteo, it's been great talking. Good to catch up. Platformatic looks really, really cool. I might start annoying you with bug reports down the road.
Oh, big time! If you want a demo whenever you want, or if anybody in the room that's listening to this wants a demo, please reach out.
Absolutely, and we'll put the URL and all that sort of stuff in the show notes. So. Cool, Matteo. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Richard.
Okay. You can find the transcript of this podcast and any links mentioned on our podcast page at voxgig.com/podcast. Subscribe for weekly editions where we talk to the people who make the developer community work. For even more, read our newsletter. You can subscribe at voxgig.com/newsletter or follow our Twitter @Voxgig. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.